Everyone. My name is Melinda Garfield, and I'm the Executive Director of Westwood Media Center. On behalf of our organization's staff and board of directors, we want to welcome you to this live candidate forum for Select Board and Sewer Commission. For those of you who don't know, WMC is a 501c3 nonprofit funded by Westwood residents who subscribe to cable TV. We are contracted by the town of Westwood to provide certain services and value that partnership. WMC's mission is to promote and enhance local television and digital media content to Westwood residents via cable and online channels in order to support an informed and active citizenry, increase the transparency and quality of civic decision-making, deepen the understanding of local issues of importance, and promote civility in public dialogue while respecting the rights to free speech and creative expression. We are proud to act as a trustworthy resource and provider of local information to the residents of Westwood. The views on tonight's forum are solely those of each candidate and do not represent our organization, its staff, or board of directors. You can find this program replayed along with countless other important videos on our government TV channel. That's Comcast Channel 12 and Verizon Channel 42. Our video content can also be found on our YouTube channel. Just search Westwood Media Center Programming. As the average person now digests their content through social media and streaming, we hope that you'll keep WMC in mind as we see funding start to decline due to current subscribers cutting out cable TV from their triple play packages. We thank you for your support. Now, let's get to the show. Tonight, we've teamed up with our community partner, the League of Women Voters, to bring you this special event. As a reminder, the election will be held on June 2nd, and please visit the town's website for more information on how to cast your vote safely. I'd like to introduce Sue Flykop, your moderator for this evening.
Hey, Melinda. Hello, and welcome to this Westwood Candidates Forum. This debate is co-sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Westwood, Walpole, and Dedham, and the Westwood Media Center. I'm Sue Flykop, a member of the League of Women Voters of Newton, and I will serve as moderator this evening. The general election will be held on Tuesday, June 2nd. The polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., observing rules of social distancing and wearing masks. If you choose to vote absentee, you can request a form on the town clerk website or obtain a form in the lobby of the police station. All ballots must be received on election day, June 2nd. Tonight, we will hear first from the candidates for the Select Board, followed by the candidates for the Sewer Commission. Let me explain the format for our debate. We will start with an opening statement from each candidate limited to 2 minutes. Then I will ask questions that have been submitted prior to the debate in writing by members of the public and the League of Women Voters. Just a note on the questions that will be asked. They will be addressed to all candidates and will apply to issues or qualifications for their particular office. We will use as many questions as time allows. We note that we received a large number of questions and will likely not be able to address them all. We will try to get to all the topics, though. Since the candidates answer the same questions, any question that was intended for a specific candidate will not be asked. We apologize for any confusion regarding the questions or the process. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the questions, and the order will rotate throughout the forum. The moderator will decide if there is a need for a rebuttal. Final closing statements will be limited to 2 minutes. So we begin by meeting the 3 candidates for Select Board. We have Michael Walsh, Joshua Ames, and Bill McLaughlin. So we're about to start with opening statements, 2 minutes each. Mr. Walsh, we'll start with you. 2 minutes to you, please.
Good evening. I would like to first thank the Westwood Media Center, formerly Westwood Media Center, formerly as WestCat. Secondly, thank the League of Women Voters for continuing this long-standing tradition despite the epidemic. My name is Michael Walsh, and I've been a member of the Select Board, our Select Board, for the past 6 years. During my time, we have replaced the East Street Bridge at no cost to the town, built a modern new state-of-the-art fire station in Islington, and a new police station, all of which were done within the confines of Proposition 2.5, and all while maintaining our superior school system. We were able to do this because of our AAA bond rating and capitalize on the lowest interest rates, at least during my lifetime. I have a special dedication to the seniors of our town, probably because I lived either in the same house or next door to my grandparents for many years before they passed away. I attend almost every event at the Council on Aging, and I even help to serve the food. We are one of the few towns in Massachusetts that has developed a fund to assist many of our aging residents with tax burdens. We are a leader in Massachusetts on the assistance to the elderly. The money is applied directly to the tax bill and in some cases equals 25% of the taxes. For others, we have a senior and a veterans work program which allow our active seniors to do some work and reduce their tax bill. We have built our commercial base, which is so important to our split tax rate, from 12.5% to almost 16%, which saves the average tax bill approximately $13.80 a year or 14%. The average median of property in Westwood has risen since my time on the board to $660,000. We have exceeded all expectations with $6 million in tax revenue at University Station and use that income not only to increase our police and fire departments, but to keep our schools and our town buildings in great shape. We have increased the number of police and firefighters to the recommended levels, not only to improve the service, but the safety of our residents. I give this town numerous hours, whether serving on various boards in town, volunteering for numerous events. I find myself able to assist any resident that needs my help. I'll tell you more about my experience and my volunteer in a few minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Ames, to you. Joshua Ames, 2 minutes, please.
Good evening. I'm Josh Ames, and I'm running for a seat on the Westwood Select Board. First, thank you to the League of Women Voters. I'm glad we leveraged technology to navigate this public health crisis and provide voters with a direct way to interact with us all. I'd also like to thank all of the other candidates this evening, Mr. Walsh, Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. Kara, and Ms. Hayes. Just running for an office in our local government can affect the narrative around the issues and encourage others to participate in the future. In my experience, far too often the shouts of a vocal few drown out the will of the many. The more broad our participation, the more we can help to mitigate the undue influence of select few and tap into a more diverse perspective. To share a little bit about myself, I'm a longtime member of the Westwood community and the only candidate for Select Board that has 2 young children, Adam, who's in the 4th grade at the Downey School, and my toddler, Edith, who will eventually attend the Sheehan School. Like many of you, the decisions surrounding the MSBA school project will have long-term effects on me, not only as a taxpayer, but more importantly as a parent. I hold degrees in both business and project management from Boston University. I've applied my education in the field of environmental health and safety at a number of academic, healthcare, and biopharmaceutical organizations around Massachusetts. I've made a career of protecting both the health and well-being of the general public, as well as the environment. Having worked in laboratories with some of the most dangerous pathogens, including Ebola and Zika virus, I can lend a unique expertise to complement our public health department as we continue to battle the coronavirus.
30 seconds.
Even without the monumental social and economic challenges COVID presents, Westwood would find itself at the precipice of some daunting challenges. As we are finally forced to confront municipal infrastructure and school system needs, we need a fresh perspective. These are issues and problems that there's no playbook for. There's no, I have the experience, I know what to do. We need to be creative and we need to be unified to overcome these challenges. As your newest member of the Select Board, I hope to represent all of Westwood, from our newest families to our lifelong residents, in facing and overcoming these challenges. Thank you.
That's that.
Thank you, Mr. Ames. Mr. McLaughlin, Bill McLaughlin, 2 minutes to you now.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Bill McLaughlin. I want to represent you as a member of the Select Board. I'm a lifelong resident of Westwood. I was born on Burgess Ave and grew up in Lions Drive. I am a 1988 graduate of Westwood High School and the proud father of 3 kids who all attended Westwood Public Schools. I volunteer in our community and have served in the Ride 22 committee, which raises awareness of prevention of suicide in veterans and first responders. I've served 29 years in the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department and has risen to the rank of lieutenant. My background has helped me hone my skills in consensus building, creative problem solving, and exercising good judgment. Now I want to share my key priorities with you. Residents are concerned about municipal spending. Despite $6 million in new tax revenue generated by University Station, the tax bill has increased $1,300 over the past 6 years. Next year, we face a significant override to fund our modern schools that our teachers and students deserve. I support the Westwood schools 100% and will work with the school committee and the school building committee on the Hanlon project. Our community will also need to address the remaining elementary school, which is not included in the Hanlon project. Second, we must make sure our seniors are not forced out of Westwood due to increasing housing costs and lack of available units. I'll work to find creative solutions to attract affordable age-restricted housing developments to provide more choices for our seniors. Finally, we need to continue to support our public safety departments. We've seen an uptick in calls for service to University Station development.
30
I-
seconds.
I support adding a police substation at University Ave to provide a permit on-site base for our police department. Talking with our chiefs, I've also learned that town-wide, one of the biggest demands is mental health calls. Everyone knows someone that's touched by mental health struggles. We need to help them. We need to create a cross-department task force that will work to develop solutions for residents facing mental health challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. We're about to start our first question. And I just wanted to remind voters that of these three candidates, you will be voting for one on June 2nd. So our first question, we'll start with Mr. Ames. What is the biggest challenge facing the town right now?
Largest challenge is really the divisiveness in town. We see in a number of areas, whether the connectivity of town in the walking and biking between our town centers, and more so the emotional component of it. There is a strong feeling of a multi-town vibe in Westwood, and I really hope that we can work together to bridge that gap. There's no reason for us to feel that way.
30 seconds.
There is a wonderful community here that locally supports one another, loves one another, can go out of their way for one another. And it doesn't take much to make us all feel like we're one Westwood.
Great, thank you, Mr. Ames. We'll go to Mr. McLaughlin next. What is the biggest challenge? What do you feel is the biggest challenge facing the town right now?
Hi, thank you. That's a very good question. From talking to people around town, I think the division between the communities in Westwood, we need to bring them all together. Like in my main model, I've been saying since the beginning, we are one West, and we need to bring everybody together. I feel that some of residents are having a hard problem trusting our representatives now. With the town vote that we had in the Islington project, they have questioned the fidelity of that.
30 seconds.
I would like to bring the town together, show complete transparency, and I value all of residents' input. That's why we are one Westwood.
Great, thank you. Mr. Walsh, to you, what is the biggest challenge facing the town right now?
Well, I think the biggest challenge right now is facing COVID and trying to figure out how we can get our town back functioning between our departments, opening our town hall. Right now, we have some major issues, including getting our voters in safely to be able to vote, be able to have a town meeting so that we can continue to function at the same level that we have in the past. Right now, our town quota is 175 people. We do not have any opportunity right now to reduce that. We have to figure out ways to be able to reduce that so we can conduct the business of the town and keep this town moving for the next 12 months.
30 seconds.
I think that is probably the biggest issue right now. And I think, my experience tells me that this is not going to be easy. Hopefully we don't have to get into financial cuts. And, we're looking at extra costs for cleaning of schools and every building that people go into. So I think right now, COVID is the biggest problem that this town has right now. And I think everyone in town would agree that that's the issue facing all of us as we're stuck in our house for the last 7 weeks.
That's time.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. McLaughlin, we'll start this next question with you. How do you think Westwood's demographics have changed since the last census? And which of your priorities do you think most resonates with this changed community?
Hi, thank you. I think there's definitely more diversity in town now. I have many people that have come up to me to want to join my team from all aspects of life. I have a huge support of the Lebanese community, and I welcome that immensely. I think we in the public safety, this is
30
is one of
seconds.
the best in the state.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Walsh, to you, do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
How do you think Westwood's demographics will have changed since the last census? And which of your priorities do you think most resonates with this changed community?
Well, and obviously the demographics have changed, in the last last time we did a census. I think that this town has become much more diverse than it ever was. We probably have about 60% of the residents now are not originally from Westwood. A lot come from the city of Boston and our surrounding areas because of our great school system. And so it's a matter of getting people involved. When you live in the city, it's a different type of government, different type of format. We have an open town meeting. If you live in the city of Boston or somewhere around there, that was not a possibility for you to be able to stand up and decide how the budget is spent,
30 seconds.
to have your voice heard, to be able to do all of those things. So it's a matter of getting people involved because, when you live in a bigger city, you don't necessarily have to get involved with government. But as a small town, every voice counts, and we like to make sure that every voice gets the opportunity to be heard.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ames, the question to you, should I repeat it?
No. So I couldn't agree more with Mr. Walsh. A lot of people in my own neighborhood, I'm seeing, these small ranches get knocked down and these neo-colonial homes get put up with now 3-4 kids. It's becoming much younger. A lot of young professional families coming to town, and they have unique needs, unique expectations. In our most recent comprehensive plan, the urgency around communal gatherings,
30
restaurants, accessible walking and biking paths around town are all these types of desires, including one of my main tenets is sustainability. It has been, in my experience, one of the most talked about problems that people see, not even just in Westwood, which we've done a decent job with, but throughout the nation and throughout the world.
The town has seen a lot of new development over the last several years. How do you weigh the benefits of new development from a revenue perspective with the costs of crime, increased traffic, and other impacts?
Sorry, Sue, can you please say who that is for?
Sorry, that was for Mr. Walsh.
The question? What was the question? I'm sorry, Susan.
Sure. The town has seen a lot of new development over the last several years. How do you weigh the benefits of new development from a revenue perspective with the costs of crime, increased traffic, and other impacts?
Well, for the most part, we have had, there hasn't been a significant increase in traffic. That's the one thing I could say. It was thought that it would be that way, but actually, when you look at the numbers are not that different as before. What's interesting is always a balancing act. You have to decide, just like every household, when money comes in, what is the best way for it to be spent? We have been extremely conservative in our budgeting for the years. In fact, we put money into the stabilization fund, which is there, for times like these. We continue to balance that. We have increased our fire department, our police department. We're now at the recommended levels for a town of our size. And we take the direct revenue from University Station to pay for those extra costs that were associated with it. And we've used the rest of the money to keep our schools and our municipal buildings in great shape for the future, for at least the next 50 years.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, you're next with the question. Do you want me to repeat it?
Please.
The town has seen a lot of new development over the last several years. How do you weigh the benefits of new development from a revenue perspective with the costs of crime, increased traffic, and other impacts?
I mean, the development has been great, bringing financial stability into the town, but I believe it's being spent way too quickly. Our average taxes of residential has increased over $1,300 over the last 6 years. and our spending has gone twice the rate of inflation. With all that incoming money, I think we need to slow down, especially with the COVID situation going on, with a lot of people feeling the
30
brunt of
seconds.
layoffs. I think we should start treating that money that's coming in as like it's almost our own, and be more careful with it.
Great, thank
Thank you.
you. You're up. Shall I repeat the question? Was that a yes?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry. The town has seen a lot of new development over the last several years. How do you weigh the benefits of a new development from a revenue perspective with the cost of crime, increased traffic, and other impacts?
Yeah, so there's a number of impacts, right? You mentioned some of them. There's also environmental and aesthetic. It is a balancing act, but I have to admit, I disagree a little bit with Mr. Walsh about how we have maintained our municipal infrastructure for so long. A lot of that development money that just came in through University Station was largely earmarked to get us up to snuff, right? Our police station was not good enough. Our fire stations were not good enough. It
30
took
seconds.
current investment with our current development to get up to snuff. We haven't been ahead of the curve on that. It's going to take some more thoughtful growth in the future. I'd like to see small and local businesses really pushed so that we don't have to worry about the large scale aesthetic impact of something like a university place. Although, again, it has had a lot of benefits.
Okay, great, thank you. We're going to stay with you, Mr. Ames, and you're going to get this next question first. What are the lessons learned from the university or Islington developments?
So to start off, the Islington development, I think the biggest lesson learned is utmost transparency. There was, as Mr. McLaughlin mentioned earlier, some, unrest associated with that development. I know our select board put in a lot of effort to try to push that transparency, but we just need to do a better job. And perhaps a better job with the selection of the types of developers that come into town and our persistent sort of dialogue with these developers. We really need to be above board, beyond reproach, and maybe have a multi-bid system that is more transparent to the public at large. I think University Station brought in a lot of revenue. It's good for the town, but it has effects, increased call volume, although that does not equate to crime. Most of those calls have been for sort of miscellaneous sort of complaints, but crime has not gone up.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Walsh. We're with this question to you next. What are the lessons learned from the university or Islington developments?
Well, to be clear, I don't know how we could possibly be any more transparent on the Islington development. I sat on that committee. We had no less than probably 28 meetings. Everyone was open to the public. Everyone was recorded by Westwood Media. It couldn't be more out there. I mean, you can put the information out. What people choose to do with it, you really have no control over. So we publicized meetings left and right on the town website. There's a newsletter you can sign up for telling you every single meeting in town. University Station has brought in great revenue for the town. I mean, it's more than double what was expected. We've been able to take care of a lot of things in town that took neglect for years. So lessons learned is that, we have to change, and to get the money we need to do things, we need to increase how our town looks, especially if we want to attract younger people.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, the question is to you. What are the lessons learned from university or Islington developments?
All right, thank you. I mean, obviously the pro is the incoming revenue from University Station, but I will have to disagree with Mr. Ames a little bit. In the 2019 report, increased disturbances down at University Station was up 87%, and the overall calls were about 29%. I have spoken to Chief Silva and also with Chief Decker, on
30
this
seconds.
subject, and I commend them both for working with this to push those numbers down. But there is high volume of disturbances and crimes being committed out of there from people from out of town, and I want to protect the neighborhoods that surround Westwood Station. That way, we can have a police substation down there instead of pulling a patrol car out of Islington. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, we're going to stick with you for this next question. You're going to be up first. Where do you recommend the next business development should be? On High Street, Route 1A, by University Station, or an expansion into existing residential areas? Would you focus more on big chain stores or small business storefronts?
Hi, thank you. That's a very good question. I believe if I had a choice, I had to make one. 109 would be my area. I believe small local chain stores, family owned, would be appropriate. We do not want, I prefer not to have it, and the residents have told me they do not want big chain stores, large developments coming into the center of Westwood on 109. The traffic right now is difficult enough for 109 to say the least.
30
And
seconds.
I think anything larger than beautifying our 109 corridor into the other towns would probably be the most appropriate place to start.
Thank you. Mr. Ames, the question is to you now. Where do you recommend the next business development will be? On High Street, Route 1A, or by University Station, or an expansion into existing residential areas? Would you focus on chain stores or on small business storefronts?
First and foremost, wherever the property sort of lends itself, I would have to say that 109 would be the most logical place, especially given the likelihood of significant portions of land being open in the future following the MSBA school project. I'm completely for, like Mr. McLaughlin said, small local businesses. I think we have plenty of big box shops, and the reality is the macroeconomic
30 seconds.
sort of trend is away from big box stores anyways. So it only makes sense to help encourage those, develop our own systems locally, whether a Chamber of Commerce to help navigate and sort of network that to bring that to Westwood. I think that's the way to go.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walsh, the question to you. Where do you recommend the next business development should be? On High Street, Route 1A, by University Station, or an expansion into existing residential areas? Would you focus more on big chain stores or small business storefronts?
Well, as an attorney who's worked for himself for the last 18 years in town, I am a big supporter of small business. In fact, I think what we have to look at too is where will our community support it? And I think you find most support for some of our smaller businesses in town. Where it would be located? Well, Islington seems to be pretty full right now. 1A, 109, High Street is probably a better solution. However, we have a traffic problem. So the short answer is it really depends on where it fits properly, right? Where we can address the neighbors' concerns, where we can keep our town a small town. And that's why I think small business is absolutely the way to go. Question is, where does it fit and what is the right way to do that? But it's not just up to the select board. The planning board has a lot to say in what happens in this town.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames, this next question will start with you. How do you respond to the idea that Westwood is incapable of sustaining many more unique small business storefronts because it is too small a population to support the storefronts, and people living outside Westwood will only be motivated to trek to Westwood for a chain store?
Yeah, so the last part of the question, I have to respectfully completely disagree. I think the trend is to go to smaller stores, especially restaurants. As a resident of the 109 area, I tend to leave Westwood to go to Medfield because they have the types of smaller stores, restaurants that I would love to see come to Westwood. I sort of lost the beginning part of that question, but we will and we can be creative about where we place these. Again, land will open up given a number of future things that are going to occur in Westwood, and we need to make sure that we are thoughtful about that land and proactive to try to capture it and develop it in a smart way.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ames. Mr. McLaughlin, to you, how do you respond to the idea that Westwood is incapable of sustaining many more unique small business storefronts because it is too small a population to support these storefronts, and because people living outside Westwood would only be motivated to trek to Westwood for a chain store?
So yeah, I think I'd have to disagree with that question or statement. I think we could definitely sustain smaller business. I mean, I love going to Westwood Pizza, Chiara's, Islington Pizza. We can definitely have more restaurants. And I think that's what the residents would like. Many have told me that we wish we had a cornerstone restaurant that we could all go to and gather after Pop Warner games and baseball games from the high school, and after watching the Wolverines beat Holliston on Thanksgiving.
30 seconds.
They don't do that anymore. I'm going back in time. But yeah, I think we definitely can sustain more small businesses in this town. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Walsh, to you, how do you respond to the idea that Westwood is incapable of sustaining many more unique small business storefronts because it has too small a population to support niche storefronts, and people living outside Westwood will only be motivated to trek to Westwood for a chain store?
Well, I think the short answer to that is it depends where in Westwood you're talking about. So if you want big box stores, we have them at University Station. But on 109 in Islington, we have smaller stores, and our neighborhoods are able to support them. We do still play Holliston on Thanksgiving, and yes, it would be great to have a place to go. But it's always a balancing act between trying to get people in to be able to keep them afloat in a small town. But it's a mindset. We have to try to change the mindset. I have two high school students and two college students, and yes, they like the big box stores. They go to Starbucks, they go to Dunkin' Donuts for their coffee instead of someplace small. So it's about changing the mindset. And it's not only up to the town, it's up to the entire community to try to sustain business. That's how we've grown, and that's how we continue to grow, is as a community.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, we're going to start off this next question. Notwithstanding the fact that having separate names for different parts of one town may contribute to a sense of division, what can you do to make Westwood and Islington feel more like one shared community with interests that align?
I really like that question. That's one of my top priorities. I grew up on both sides of town. I was born in Burgess and grew up on Lions Drive, so 109, and then all the way over the other side off down by University Ave. We are one town, and I don't know why there are divisions. I don't see a problem with calling certain areas the Maze, the Loop, Islington. I think the problem is in the political arena that people have lost some faith that we are one Westwood. We need to listen to everybody. If there's
30
some
seconds.
109, then the people in Islington and over off of Everett Street still have a voice to be heard, and vice versa. And that's what I think I would do if I'm elected. I would hold regular business hours and listen to all my residents and see what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McLaughlin. Mr. Walsh, to you, notwithstanding the fact that having separate names for different parts of one town may contribute to a sense of division, what can you do to make Westwood and Islington feel more like one shared community with interests that align?
Thank you, Susan. So, I live in Islington. I have been, my kids going to the Downey School, and I've been over here. In fact, I was the first selectman elected from the Downey School area in 40 years. So I have done everything I can to try to reach out to people. I work in town. I answer my phone at my law office every single day, and residents call me anytime they want without office hours, and sometimes right in the middle of the day, sometimes after hours, and I'm always willing to talk to them. Anyone who's ever reached out to me knows that I am always there to
30
answer their
seconds.
questions the best that I can and to try to help them. Now, if they don't reach out, I can't, address their concerns. People have called me for everything from potholes to garbage around the town, and I'm always available, and I do my best to take care of it right away. And anyone who's ever dealt with me knows that I'm telling them the truth.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ames, the question to you. Notwithstanding the fact that having separate names for different parts of one town may contribute to a sense of division, what can you do to make Westwood and Islington feel more like one shared community with interests that align?
Yeah, so I agree a lot with Mr. McLaughlin. It builds that extra sense of, camaraderie, having these small subsects, right? The loop, the maze, all this. I don't think that's what the feeling really is. And I've heard that from a number of constituents in town. It's really the feeling of not being heard. Mr. Walsh saying that it's the first time in 40 years that somebody from that side of town, the Downey district, has been elected to the select board is concerning, right? Everyone should feel like that their local needs are being heard and disseminated to the town. Personally, I would love to see an increase of the select board where you could have one at large and 4 precinct-based select people that could help maybe assuage some of that helplessness, that perceived helplessness.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Walsh, you're going to go first with this. We're switching gears a little. What are your thoughts on true solutions for affordable housing in Westwood, including starter home inventory as well as senior housing? What other plans to take care of the elder population who have given so much to the community?
So, as I said in my opening statement, we have done a lot for the elderly in this town, but it's never enough. We just keep trying to come up with more ways that we can keep our seniors in town. We came up with the Aid to the Elderly Fund, which I am the chair. We donate to take our tax dollars and donations together to be able to keep our elderly citizens in town. And they are very grateful for what we do. We are trying to keep everyone in town. There have been no less than 5 different developments that have come in front of the planning board for approval. 3 were approved and 2 were not. And those were all set out to address some of the concerns that we have for senior housing and for affordable housing in town. We continue to do what we can. We have limited resources. We have limited locations. And it always depends on the developer. We've even changed zoning in certain areas to try to encourage it for senior housing for our seniors in town.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ames, to you, what are your thoughts on true solutions for affordable housing in Westwood, including starter home inventory as well as senior housing? What are the plans to take care of the elder population who have given so much to our community?
Yeah, so first and foremost, kudos to the select board, Mr. Walsh, everyone on it, for pushing the aid to the elderly. It's a fantastic program. It isn't a complete solution, of course, but Mr. Walsh also touched on the fact that we are a smaller community that doesn't have an expansive amount of space to build more housing. We can't both be against development, residential development, and support these at need populations. I would love to look at something even, quasi sort of ingenuitive and look at some residential tax credits that might help the lower income threshold of a lot of our residential older residents of the town to stay in their homes.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, what are your thoughts on true solutions for affordable housing in Westwood, including starter home inventory as well as senior housing? What are the plans to take care of the elder population who have given so much to our community?
I couldn't agree more that they're the ones that we need to protect the most. They're the ones that, like my parents, raised me here, stayed here, and then eventually you had to move out to a lower tax-based community. I would propose a means-tested affordable benefit for them that some of our neighboring towns have done, Sherburne and Holliston. Also, the state allows seniors to defer their taxes until and when, if they want to sell their house.
3 seconds.
On top of that, towns also can tweak that, where Westwood now charges the seniors interest on that, where Marshfield does not. They just lets them to defer it until they decide to sell their house.
Susan, that looks like a follow-up from Michael Walsh.
I was just about to say, it looks like there's a rebuttal. So let's start with Mr. Walsh, and everyone will get a chance, another 30 seconds. So we'll start with Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. We do have that in town, and it's been in place for a long time for the seniors to be able to defer their taxes to the end. We also have a senior work-off program that I discussed for seniors and veterans. Those that are able, not disabled, and want to cut down on their tax bill. You might remember if you go to the high school, you would see a senior at the front desk checking adults into the high school. There are jobs all over town, and the seniors who are able take advantage of them. Those that are not have the right to defer their taxes until the end. In addition to the aid to the elderly, we are a leading community in Massachusetts, and we get called all the time as to how we're able to do it. So Westwood is a leader when it comes to helping the elderly.
Thank you. Mr. Ames, would you like another 30 seconds?
No, I think Michael said all that there is to say. We are a leader. Can we do better? Of course we can do better. But we have a lot of programs out there that if it's pushed out well enough and people understand what the legality of everything is and the availability of these programs, hopefully they can take advantage of them. And maybe it's an educational thing too. Maybe we need to push that
10 seconds.
Out to the community a little bit better.
Thank you. And Mr. McLaughlin, another 30 seconds for you.
Yes, thank you. So I do know about the aid to the elderly and things like that. But from what the seniors have told me, it's not enough. And I feel that we could follow Marshfield's lead and not tax them with an interest rate on their own money that they're deferring. And that would definitely help. I've numerous seniors
10 seconds.
and brought this subject up. And it's something I will definitely look into and push forward to make the town even more attractive to the seniors.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames, we're going to start this next question with you. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. On the topic of 40B affordable housing in Westwood, what is your position on dealing with homeowners who have badly struggled or made zero effort to maintain their affordable houses that follow program guidelines?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say I'm a stickler for the rules. There has to be a penalty when you're not maintaining your property in the appropriate manner. Plenty of towns have blight ordinances. That's something that we can definitely move in if that's the implication of the question of the exterior function. But we can't just let the aesthetic of town be diminished. I understand that we can't push people out of town either, but looking to them, working with them, letting them know what the expectation is up front is always important. Again, education and communication are the key.
Thank you, Mr. Ames. Okay, Mr. Walsh, you're next. On the topic of 40B affordable housing in Westwood, what is your position on dealing with such homeowners who have badly struggled or made zero effort to maintain their affordable houses that follow program guidelines?
So it's heavily regulated by the state. And so, we're kind of limited as to what we can do. But I think as a town, we need to have a discussion with people that aren't taking care of their property. We need to have a sit down with them, figure out ways that we can do it. It's not fair to their neighbors. It's not fair to the people that live in that area. We want to try to do the best. We've always tried to do the best to keep our affordable housing stock, right up to where we should be. I'd love to do better, but as I said, we have limited resources and limited land. But I think the dialogue has to be open, and I'm not sure how we open it. It's always a tough discussion, but I think someone has to, maybe the housing director, step out and if they're notified, and try to check in with these people and find out what they can do. Maybe offer some tax incentives or something that we could try to do as a town so that every resident benefits and that every resident feels that their property is just as important, no matter who they live next door to or how the property might be looking.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. McLaughlin, on the topic of 40B affordable housing in Westwood, what is your position on dealing with such homeowners who have badly struggled or made zero effort to maintain their affordable houses that follow program guidelines?
That's a good question. So I have been in contact with the affordable housing director, and she told me there are no complaints. But to answer that question, not just 40Bs, but every resident of Westwood should maintain their house in a proper manner by zoning laws, because we want to keep our town up nice and pretty and allow people that want to come into town move into anybody next to anybody they want. So everybody, I think, is equal, not just, the 40Bs. Everybody should maintain their property. Thank you.
We're going to stick with you for, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin, we're going to stick with you for this next question. A bit of a switch here. The Hanlon project will likely leave an elementary school, Sheehan or Deerfield, that will be remaining with significant capital needs. How do you see the school in a list of town capital projects?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Sure. The Hanlon project will likely leave an elementary school, either Sheehan or Deerfield, remaining with significant capital needs. How do you see that remaining school in the list of town capital projects?
Yes, it's definitely, there's no doubt about it. I talked about it in my opening statement that I will work with the school committee and the project committee. There will be one school left out of it. There's only going to be two that will be brought together. Three to be brought together as one. It's something that we're going to have to look at. And unfortunately, I want answers to this question is, how did this happen? How did we have 3 elementary schools all fall apart at the same time? There
30
should
seconds.
be watching these schools to maintain them, that we don't run into this problem again. But there's definitely going to be a long discussion how we're going to have to pay for that third school, and it will have to be addressed because our kids do come first, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames, the Hanlon project will likely leave an elementary school, either Sheehan or Deerfield, still remaining with significant capital needs. How do you see that remaining school on the list of town capital projects?
Well, it is absolutely imperative that we get it addressed. I agree with Mr. McLaughlin that it is unfortunate that we didn't have enough foresight. We weren't proactive enough to address this earlier. The school committee's budget has not been cut. So I'm not exactly sure, why the level of degradation that we're seeing currently. I'm very excited for the Hanlon project. The reality is the Sheehan School is probably going to be the one
30
left behind.
seconds.
It's also one of the largest of the elementary schools. So we're going to impact a lot of the children. So I think we have to be creative as a town and try to look at different avenues, maybe municipal bond sale, like Cambridge did just recently, had very good success. We can do some public-private partnerships to raise money, not just raise taxes, right? There's a difference. And then obviously development is going to be a third sort of part of that.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Walsh, to you, the Hanlon project will likely leave an elementary school remaining with significant capital needs. How do you see the remainder school in a list of town capital projects?
So the schools are taking number one. We know that. If anyone has watched the select board, they know that we have taken backseat. We have our fire station, our police station up to code. It is taking into consideration our female firefighters and our female police officers, which the old were not. And we understand that we now have to take care of our schools. And it's not that we have to. We have the opportunity to. We are getting money from the state to replace the Hanlon School, and with that,
30 seconds.
They agreed we should join one of the other schools, if not both of the other schools. We realize that one will be out, and it'll be up to the school committee to come up with a plan. And I can tell you right now that as a member of the select board, I and our other 2 members are fully in support of the school committee, and they know that. We've had the discussion. One of us serves on the school building committee right now, and the chair every year continues to serve on that board.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walsh. We're going to stick with you for the next question.
Susan, there's
Yep.
a rebuttal from
Okay. Thank you. Okay, 30 seconds to you, Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you. I think it sounds like the 3 of us agree that the students and children of Westwood come first. If I'm elected, I will definitely put the Sheehan School first before any other municipal projects. I want to know if the other 2 would agree, especially where they're looking at a new fire station on 109 and a new
10
town.
seconds.
I would put the school first before any other projects in Westwood.
Okay, Thank you. Mr. Ames, would you like to respond? 30 seconds?
Yes, of course. Well, the short answer is it depends. The 109 fire station can't even support a ladder truck at this point. It's in dire need of replacement in many of its facets. If we had some more proactive thought around the new police station, we made a multi-use type of building.
10 seconds.
Might have been able to save a lot of money there and save on future capital expenditure. We have the new Sheehan School will not be built in a day. It's going to be a process.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ames. Mr. Walsh, 30 seconds to you.
I think that anyone that has been watching the select board understand what our priorities are, and our priorities have been the schools. We understand that this is not two schools being fixed. We have understood from day one that we need to address all three schools, whether it's in one big project or in one smaller project. We understand that. That's part of the entire project. It has been since day
10
one.
seconds.
So I don't understand where the controversy comes from. It's always been on the table since day one and has been talked about in the last 6 years that I've been on the board.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on to well, it's not a different topic, but Mr. Walsh, this first question is for you. Would you try to repair the mother's morning out situation?
We have been trying to repair it since it fell apart. The problem is we negotiated a great deal for MMO. I can tell you this, in my select board, the 6 years that I've been here, every single year, they only wanted to sign a 1-year extension. And it's been that way. We've offered them longer and they turned it down. So, you know, I suppose looking back now, there might have been some handwriting on the wall. Why not sign a 5-year lease with the town? We negotiated a great deal. We negotiated great new space for
30
them.
seconds.
A brand new play area, their own bathrooms, their own parking, everything. And no rent increase for 5 years. 5 years, they wouldn't have had to pay any increase in the rent. So yes, I would like to duplicate it. In fact, I might even, I'm thinking about advocating for a preschool in the new school as a way to make up for it, because the extra space will be there and we can incorporate that to try to make up for MMO.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, to you. Would you try to repair the mother's morning out situation?
I mean, I'd definitely be willing to try. I've spoken to a few people that are involved over there. And I mean, as it looks right now, unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's repairable. And you know, it's sad to see it go. It's been here for many years, and it's the only really affordable preschool in town for working families. 75 families, I believe, are looking for new daycare and preschool options now. And one of the biggest things they've told me was that the
30 seconds.
that were available to the new site, which wasn't going to work for them. It was going to cause too much traffic problems and things like that. So, I mean, I would try, but from what I've talked to some of the people on their board, it's unrepairable, and it's unfortunate.
All right, Mr. Ames, to you. Would you try to repair the mother's morning out situation?
So we're never going to be able to repair what it was. I mean, we can move forward and have it evolve. It's very unlikely that we can, quote unquote, repair it. We are in desperate need for affordable preschool and early childhood education in town. Everywhere is, especially with the number of new families coming to town. So it's incumbent on us, just like Mr. Walsh said, is to find a new location to attract and develop a early childhood preschool
30 seconds.
type of area. I think that's a fantastic idea at the new school, but there's others. There's definitely others, and there will be more property opening up, especially with the consolidation of the schools. So we can always look at that parcel of land as well. But we need to be creative. We need to be proactive about it. We can't just let it fester.
Susan, there's a rebuttal from Mr. Walsh.
Okay, let's go with that. 30 seconds to you, Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. I just want to say that so people understand, this was not negotiated in a vacuum. MMO had a seat at the table in negotiating with the developer, with the town, and to set up this. And this was exactly as they originally had asked for. And as the plans continue to develop, the plans continue to change. It's frustrating. I can't tell you the numerous hours we spent negotiating
10
with the
seconds.
developer. Can you imagine 5 years without your rent increasing is almost unheard of, and yet the deal fell apart.
Okay, Mr. McLaughlin, would you like another 30 seconds?
Yes, please. Thank you. Just to reiterate on what Mr. Ames was saying, I agree we need to move forward and find space for another preschool. I have attended many of the meetings for the Hanlon project, and unfortunately, there is no design to put another preschool there. So
10 seconds.
I think the select board and moving forward would have to find definitely somewhere, at least one, if not two, affordable preschools.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames, 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I've experienced this issue very acutely with my daughter. There is no place to bring a young child for daycare. We've had to go out of town. It's just too expensive anywhere else, or it's not available. We're on wait list for over a year. It is, I'd say, a priority of mine to figure out how to
10
move forward
seconds.
with developing a new early and preschool education area that we can utilize as a town.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Ames. This next question will start with you. I have to apologize to all the people who sent in these great questions. We're about halfway through them right now, so we'll be skipping around a little. So, Mr. Ames, how will you balance residential, business, and school development plans with preserving green space?
So that's a complex question for sure. But the reality is, first let's define what green space is. I'm not in favor of green space being declared just because somebody had a substantial lot and decided to put that into conservation land, and it's not accessible to the public. That is not what I see, and honestly, that's not what the IRS sees as a conservation land. Conservation land and
30 seconds.
green space really needs to be open to the public, usable for the public, not just the aesthetic of a few. The reality is we don't have a lot of space in town. We're going to have to make tough choices sometimes, but we can incorporate green features into our buildings that make it more aesthetically pleasing and make it more open and more natural in feel. So there's a lot of research out there, a lot of building documentation out there that we can leverage.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ames. Mr. McLaughlin, to you next. How will you balance residential, business, and school development plans with preserving green space?
I think Josh nailed it on the head. We really don't have that much land around, and the ones that we do want to conserve, I agree, should be open to the public, walking trails, people getting out, do their exercises and stuff like that. With the new schools and stuff like that, yes, there should be some green spaces, maybe open air for the kids to gather and go. Again, right now, I think that's all the kids want to do with the COVID crisis going on. They've all been locked up. But yeah, I mean, it's not my
30 seconds.
but I would definitely feel that it should be all open to the public, any open land that we do preserve.
Thank you. Mr. Walsh, next to you. How will you balance residential, business, and school development plans with preserving green space?
Thank you. You know, it's always been a balance. So since I've been on the board, the land trust has put 14.4 acres into the land trust itself. You know, people will talk about wanting to preserve the small town feel. Part of that is by having land that is not developed. And so it's always a balance. I mean, we have right now a balance between businesses and residential and the school system. The school has lots of acres behind the Hanlon. We are going to do our best to conserve as much of it as we can. But on the other hand, we are also always trying to balance what is the right thing. Westwood is a small town, and we want to try to, as I said in my anyone that's watched on Westwood Media, we want to try to keep the woods in Westwood. That's part of what makes this town a great thing. And so we continue as a select board to do everything we can and encourage the land trust to lock up as much of the land as we can to keep that small town feel and the wooded feel of our small town.
Thank you very much. Mr. McLaughlin, this question, oh, I'm sorry.
There is
a rebuttal.
a rebuttal.
Okay, Mr. Ames, another 30 seconds then.
So Two parts. The land trust, I think they have some great work, but my worry is that not all that property is accessible or usable to the public, truly. And the second part of that is, what about hail? Hail last summer came up as an urgent need, correct? Where
10 seconds.
the hail task force was supposed to be developed, and we were supposed to look for solutions for the largest wooded area in Westwood so that it potentially can't get development, but nothing has happened as of yet, as
That's
far as
time.
I'm aware.
Okay, Mr. Ames, Mr. McLaughlin, 30 seconds.
I could pass.
Okay, and Mr. Walsh, to you.
Yeah, I think what everyone seems to forget is, this is not town-owned land. This is land that's owned by individuals. If they're willing to give up their land and put it in the land trust, then so be it. That's protecting it from the future. Hale Reservation is a privately owned foundation. And so, they come to us and we are trying to do the best we
10
can to
seconds.
preserve it, to keep it in town and to making it functional for everyone in town. So I think we're doing a great job, and we open the discussion with Dover and the Hale Reservation to try to do the best we can to
That's
make sure
time.
it stays as Hale.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna go to Mr. McLaughlin next to answer this question first. I actually was going to move us on to a new topic, but since it was mentioned, let's talk about Hale Reservation. Hale Reservation is the single largest environmental resource in Westwood, but there has been very little action by the town to help preserve this property since discussions last summer. How do you envision addressing this issue? And that's for Mr. McLaughlin first.
I would definitely support helping Hale out, as long as we're, financially responsible. I would definitely be on the committee for that. I grew up here, like I said, many times, and I went to Hale when I was a younger child and went to some of the camps there. So I would definitely not like to see that disappear. I would fight with everything I got to help preserve that.
Mr. Walsh, to you next. Hale Reservation is the single largest environmental resource in Westwood, but there has been very little action by the town to help preserve this property since discussions last summer. How do you envision addressing this issue?
So first, it's up to Hale to really come up with a plan. I can tell you right now, we've had this discussion and everyone seems to just blow by it. We're trying to build a new elementary school. We may not have the resources to be able to contribute to Hale. If you want to make the schools priority, then they have to be priority. Hale Reservation supports a lot of, not only Westwood and Dover, but a lot of people from the city come out. There are summer camps there. Hale has to come up with a plan, and then we will support their plan to make sure that they don't have to sell off any of their
30 seconds.
We'll do the best we can. We will work with Dover. We will seek grants, state and federal grants, maybe even from the city of Boston, whose children use it a lot during the summertime for our summer camps. There are ways to do it. I'm not necessarily sure that the town is going to have the resources. We were going out for a brand new elementary school that we're going to probably need a debt exclusion to be able to pay for.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames. Hale Reservation is the single largest environmental resource in Westwood, but there's been very little action by the town to help preserve this property since discussions last summer. How do you envision addressing this issue?
Well, we need to discuss it, right? We need to bring Hale to the table. We need to make sure that everyone's on board. I totally agree that I don't know what kind of funds we're going to have to even support that, but maybe searching for grants, trying to solicit some public-private donation and sponsorship. I'm assuming that most of Westwood would be willing to chip in to buy a purchase of Hale. They want to see that
30
maintained.
seconds.
And to Mr. Walsh's previous point about, keeping the green and the wood in Westwood, it seems a little disingenuous to speak about both things at the same time, with the Westwood Land Trust being, doing the right thing and the town not sort of helping push the narrative along and the discussion along about Hale being something completely different and something that's off the table or not a priority at the very least.
Okay. Thank you. We will go to Mr. Walsh next. Then with this next question, it's a little bit of a change. how is COVID-19 impacting priorities in town? We had several questions about COVID-19. So how is it impacting the priorities, and how should the town be involved?
So our Board of Health Director, Jared, is doing a great job. And, we have a new town administrator, Chris Coleman. They are working overtime to try to address many of the issues in town. We've had, fortunately, our budget is already in for the year, so we will not face any challenges for this year's budget. But depending on how long this lasts, we'll have some serious issues to address. Right now, for example, our buildings have to be cleaned that are open to the public. Fire stations, police stations have to be cleaned regularly and a lot more frequently. It has changed the town. Right now, there are skeleton crews on so that our town continues to function. But it's not an easy thing, and we are doing the best that we can. Even our select board meetings have been cut back to only do priority because we want the public to be involved in any decisions and public hearings that have to happen. So it's definitely impacted the town a lot. We are reaching out to try to help small businesses. I personally on Facebook and trying to help all the small businesses, including this week, it was adopt a senior from the high school to try to help our seniors, through this COVID-19.
Thank you. Mr. McLaughlin, to you, how is COVID-19 impacting priorities in town, and how should the town be responding?
Well, COVID-19 has affected the town, the state, and the whole country. Given so many that are suffering and in need, we should work on limiting the taxes for now, and to no more than equal to inflation. Other priorities would have to wait, except for the school project probably is the number one thing on the table right now. And then and support our first responders. I mean, they're the ones out there, and that's just not police and fire. Mr. Walsh touched on it.
30 seconds.
The staff has done a phenomenal job, and I would love to be appointed to the reentry committee for the students returning. With my background in law enforcement and working at the jails in Boston, I have worked to sanitize those places, keeping my officers, my staff, and the detainees safe.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Mr. Ames, to you, how is COVID-19 impacting priorities in town, and how should the town be responding?
Yeah, so the reality is we don't quite know yet. This year we're fine. Next year we're going to lose money that we get from the rest of the state. We're going to, if we lower our taxes to help support people during this crisis, the town is going to lose revenue. We're going to have to focus more on critical infrastructure and critical services, at least in the short term. This is going to put off some like to haves. And we have to swallow that.
30
unfortunately,
seconds.
No one expected this type of life-altering process to occur, and we need to evolve and adapt to it. And of course, I had plenty of experience decontaminating things in my life. So if anybody needs some either expertise or some assistance, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Ames, you're going to be first in this next question.
Sure.
Let's see. Oh, here it is. How would you tackle the mental health and opioid crisis that is affecting suburban communities such as Westwood?
Well, I guess first things first, at least we're largely on the other side of, sort of the unbelievable pit that we were in. We're getting in a better place, but we can always do more. A lot of it goes back to mental health. A lot of it goes to education. I myself actually have lost my father to opioid addiction. It's very dear to my heart, and mental health likewise has been a significant issue in my
30 seconds.
There are plenty of programs out there. Connecting people to those programs are important. Whether in our education system through the high school where people start to get introduced to that, but also adults, right? It affects us all, and having support groups for those of us who've lost people.
Thank you very much. Mr. Walsh, to you, how would you tackle the mental health and opioid crisis that is affecting suburban communities such as Westwood?
Well, it's not how, I guess, how would we have been, but you can never do enough. Part of the problem, and I don't think anybody can disagree with it, is the stigma that comes with it. People are afraid to reach out, family members, because their neighbors will talk or their friends will hear about it or someone, and it's a terrible stigma that's happened, for mental health issues in the opioid crisis. I have worked with Emily Medina from the I Am Strong Foundation, the entire foundation, every single year. I volunteer my services to
30
do the
seconds.
walk that they have every single year. They are doing a great job. They've really brought it to the forefront, and they can tell you it's difficult to try to break that stigma and to get people involved. But I think we're doing as much as a small town can do by providing the resources, the opportunities, and keeping the dialogue open through the I Am Strong Foundation.
Thank you very much. Crisis that is affecting suburban communities such as Westwood.
I'm sorry, Susan, can you restate that? You were on mute.
Sure. All right, so this is for Mr. McLaughlin. How would you tackle the mental health opioid crisis that is affecting suburban communities such as Westwood?
So I work with the opioid crisis day in and day out. We're at the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, and we're still definitely in a crisis. Enough is never enough. There's always more that we can do. And then with the mental health issues, we can always do more, especially in the school systems where these kids these days have a ton of pressure on them with stress to get good grades, get into college, then the financial responsibilities of college. We need to address it more in our school system by possibly having certain teachers, English, math, or history, that have a background in mental health, where there is no stigma of going, like, you're going to go down to the psychiatrist's office. You can go see that math teacher and talk to them, or the English teacher. It has affected my life. It has affected my children's life. So I appreciate everything that the town has done so far, but we can always do more.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we are on to, I think this is going to be our last question before final statements. We've been talking for over an hour now, so I think it's fair to say this is the last question. There's just so many to choose from, so I'm going to help you wrap it up with this. Please just, this is for, let's see, Mr. McLaughlin, you'll be first. Please describe what you think is the character of Westwood. Which of these things is most important to preserve, and which of these aspects would you try and change?
So, I mean, Westwood's Westwood. The small town feel, the closeness, like we touched on the Loop, the Maze, Islington. But we're one Westwood, a tight community. So 7 years ago when I lost my wife to cancer, this community stood up and rallied around me. And if the community wasn't there, I don't know where me and my kids would have ended up. It was tough. I was launched into a mother role. Mother's Day just went by, and I had to be a mom and a dad.
30 seconds.
The community that Westwood is, I would continue to work the way it works. I mean, we have probably the best town in the Massachusetts Commonwealth, and we need to preserve that. The way our community rallies around each other, our kids, our neighbors, and that's what I continue to support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ames, to you. Please describe what you think is the character of Westwood. Which of these things is most important to preserve, and which of these aspects would you try and change?
So I think first and foremost, Mr. McLaughlin's right on point. The community, one of the major reasons that I just absolutely love it here is that, I walk down the street and all my neighbors say hi. From where I grew up in the inner city, that's a very different feel for me. It makes me feel at home. It makes me feel like I am in a special place. Secondly, we've spoken about a couple times the environmental sort of appeal. It's a beautiful town. There's a lot of open space, a lot of wood.
30 seconds.
I'd love to see that maintained as best as we can. The thing that I think that we can do a better job on is, adoption and adoption of change. I noticed that there's some resistance. It's okay to be nostalgic about some things, but we have to be forward thinking. We have to be proactive with issues before it just comes back and bites us in the butt. We can't just stick our head in the sand and pretend things aren't going to happen to us. Things aren't going to change.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Walsh, to you. Please describe what you think is the character of Westwood. Which of these things is most important to preserve, and which aspects would you try and change?
Well, so I, like many people who are in Westwood now, came here for a couple of reasons. First, obviously, is the school system. Second is the small town feel, and third is because it's a great community which is easily accessible to most areas within the state. So it's always a balance between how do you grow, attract younger couples and younger individuals to our town by still trying to maintain a smaller feel to it. It's always a balancing act right through
30
to the very
seconds.
end. You know, people complain we don't have enough younger people in town and there's unaffordable housing. So when we create affordable housing or create new condos, which will go into Islington, and we do some of these other things, we're trying to attract younger people. But younger people are not coming from the way Westwood was. We know what they want. The question is the balance to provide them with enough that they want to come to live here like most of us have.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're going to go to closing statements now, which are 2 minutes. And we're going to follow the same order that we did for the opening statement. So Mr. Walsh, to you first, 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I would like to thank everyone for tuning in this evening and giving up your usual Wednesday night, 7 o'clock television, whatever it's been during COVID. I would like to thank both of my opponents for engaging in the democratic process. Conversation and dialogue are healthy, and I wish our country was doing more of it. For those of you that I haven't met, I hope that you get some understanding of who I am and what I've done in town. I tried to explain it all to you at the beginning of the numerous things that we've been able to accomplish. You know, my 33 years as a trial attorney, my 18 years in this town, first for my business and 15 years of living here, my 6 years on the board, my service on numerous boards, including the Massachusetts State Selectmen Association, where I've served for the last 2 years as secretary. I serve on numerous networking boards, which provides excellent resources to our town, including the Safe Routes to School program and the Complete Streets program, all of which I gained because not only am I serving Westwood, but I'm also serving outside of Westwood to enhance our quality of life here. I've been a member now for the last 6 years. I'm not afraid to show that I'll stand up when I disagree, whatever the issue is. All of my experience and leadership has contributed to making Westwood a great town. I mean, think of this. Are you better off now than you were 6 years ago? And I think for anyone who's lived in this town, the answer is yes. We have a great fire station. We have a state-of-the-art police station, which will carry us long into the future, probably, hopefully, another 50 years. We are experiencing unprecedented times. Experience right now matters more than ever. Understanding budgets, contracts, and the issues that face this town, not only our town, but every town in the Commonwealth, of the experience that I bring to this table. My name is Michael Walsh, and whether you vote in person or by mail, please vote for me for our June 2nd election. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mr. Ames, 2 minutes to you for a closing statement.
Thank you. This has been a great event, and I'm thankful to all the Westwood residents that submitted questions for the forum. At times they were very challenging and thought-provoking. Without your engagement, this political process would not be meaningful. I appreciated getting to hear the variety of questions that were represented today, and I think it is vital for all of you watching not to make this a popularity contest. We should base our votes on what the candidates say and do. Politics should be more than just handshaking, more than kissing babies, more than leveraging fear or identity-based ideologies. Politics and your politicians should be focused on the facts and working to make our town inclusive of all residents. Ask yourself which candidate best aligns with my values. I hope all of you make your voice heard on June 2nd. If you are uncomfortable going to the polls, please consider submitting an early or absentee ballot. For additional information regarding my campaign, please visit Josh for Westwood on Facebook.com. Thank you and be safe.
Thank you, Mr. Ames. Mr. McLaughlin. Oh, I don't know if you heard me. Thank you, Mr. Ames. Mr. McLaughlin, 2 minutes to you.
I'd like to thank the Westwood Media Center and the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to discuss my priorities for Westwood and the ideas for tackling the critical issues our community faces. These are my priorities for our community. However, as a member of the Select Board, my job is to work for you. Listening is a powerful tool, and I will hold regular business hours to hear your concerns. especially today's challenging times with COVID-19. We are in this together, and we must stick together. As a lifelong resident, I've been saddened by the divisions that have emerged in our town over the past few years, and the impact of some of the new developments on our sense of community that have led to the cherished institution like the MMO Nursery School closing. We must unite this special town during these troubling times, and I have spent my entire career working to bring people together. Regardless of what neighborhood you are from or live in, there is more that connects us. We are all one Westwood. I'm asking you for this opportunity to serve you on the select board and would appreciate your vote on June 2nd. With the challenges in our community is facing, we need new perspective to solve them. We need fresh ideas, creative thinking, and authentic representation. To learn more about me, you can visit my website at www.billmclaughlinforsb.com. Finally, I'd like to thank the healthcare heroes, my fellow public safety officers, for putting themselves on the front lines during this unprecedented time.
30 seconds.
Be well, stay safe, and look out for each other. Thank you very much.
And I want to, on behalf of the League and the Westwood Media Center, I want to thank all three candidates for Select Board, Michael Walsh, Joshua Ames, Bill McLaughlin. And I'd like to remind all the voters that on June 2nd, you will be voting for one of these candidates. So thank you again. And I think we are going to quickly switch over to our candidates for the Sewer Commission, if I'm correct about that.
Give me 1 second. We're changing over.
Okay. We're going to follow, for viewers, we're going to follow the same format with two members of the two candidates for Sewer Commission. You'll obviously be voting for one of these people. They'll make opening statements, and then we'll run through some questions, and then there'll be closing statements. And we have everyone here. Okay, so we have two candidates for Sewer Commission, Diane Hayes and Andrew Cara. And we're going to jump right in with 2-minute opening statements. First with Ms. Hayes. Oh, no?
I'm still muted. Oh, hello?
There we go. Hello.
Okay, wonderful.
2 minutes to you then.
Okay, good evening. My name is Diane Hayes. I just want to say, first of all, thank you to the Westwood Media Center and the League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's event. I'm here tonight running for a seat on the Sewer Commission. I have been a resident of Westwood since 2013. I am a professional engineer registered in the state of Massachusetts, and I have 20 years experience in municipal engineering with both the public and private sector. My professional experience naturally lends itself to this position. Last summer, the Select Board reached out to me and appointed me to the Sewer Commission to fill a vacancy. So I have enjoyed serving the town in this capacity, and I look forward to doing so for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. And on to you, Mr. Cara. 2 minutes to you. Oh, hold on a minute. I think he's still muted. There we go.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Cara. I'm a candidate for Sewer Commissioner for a 1-year term. Before I get started telling you about myself, I too would like to thank the League of Women Voters and the Westwood Media Center for the chance to be here tonight. I live at 49 Pear Tree Drive in Westwood with my wife Meg and 2 daughters, Katie and Maggie. Katie and Maggie are 4th graders at the Downey Elementary School. Meg works at First Parish Church here in Westwood. I grew up in Westwood on Weatherby Drive, where my parents still live today. In terms of my education, I received an undergraduate degree from the College of the Holy Cross. I also received a law degree from Suffolk University. I've been a licensed attorney in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for the past 20 years. I've specialized in real estate law. For the past 6 years, I've been a partner at Rubin & Rudman, a Boston-based law firm. I regularly advise people on acquiring, leasing, financing, entitling, and selling property. In addition to my legal work, I also serve on the board of directors of Commonwealth Cooperative Bank. Commonwealth is a small community bank located in Hyde Park. In terms of community service, I've volunteered at my daughter's Katie and Maggie School, the Downey School, the last few years for various events. I've also coached them on the soccer and basketball fields. I want to be in the SOAR Commission to engage in public service, invest in the community where my daughters are going to grow up for the next few years. I think Westwood's a great town. It's a thriving town.
30
I
seconds.
want to help it continue to thrive in the future. And I believe the skill set I've developed as an attorney and on the board of the bank would be valuable and an important asset to the board, as it has been for other attorneys in the past on the commission. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. Mr. Kara, we're going to start our first question with you. And it is, what are the top challenges facing the Sewer Commission?
I think the biggest issue for the SOAR Commission going forward is going to be capital. We have 87 miles of sewer line. We have 11 pump stations. Even though 95% of the system has been built out, based on the discussions that I've had with different people in town, including the director, Todd Korchin, I think a lot of this line is at the end of its useful life. At some point in the future, it's going to have to be replaced. I think it's important that we continue to do capital needs studies, have the right experts, and be in a position to replace the system when it needs to be replaced, as opposed to having any unpleasant surprises.
Thank you very much. Ms. Hayes, to you, what are the top challenges facing the Sewer Commission?
I think right now, the biggest challenge facing the Sewer Commission is the COVID-19. Right now, most sewers systems across the state of Massachusetts and across the country are dealing with a lot of things being flushed down the toilet because they don't belong there. And what's happening is a lot of pump stations are getting hung up on that. And the last thing we want to do is have sewer backups at this point in time. As far as challenges for the Sewer Commission, we're very fortunate in this town that we have a great system.
30 seconds.
It's relatively new, and we also operate off an enterprise fund, which means that we always have capital available and don't have to take money out of taxes to pay for what we do.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to stay with you, Ms. Hayes, for the next question. What do you think the role of the Sewer Commissioner should look like?
Well, I have been serving on the Sewer Commission since last August. So I think it's a checks and balance type of thing for the DPW. When a challenge arises, they present what they want to do or what needs to be done, whether it's through a development or, capital work that needs to get done on the system. They present it to the Sewer Commission, and the Sewer Commission can kind of say, yeah, that makes sense. That's how we want to spend the town's money. Or that's not a
30
good way to
seconds.
spend the town's money.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kara, to you, what do you think the role of the Sewer Commissioner should look like?
I think at the end of the day, it's ultimately a supervisory role. We're going to rely on Todd Korchin and his staff and the recommendations that they make to the Sewer Commission. I think it's very important to stay engaged, obviously to make sure that everything is being done that it needs to be done. But again, I think a big part of the commission's job is an advisory and supervisory role, again, relying on Mr. Korchin and his staff, relying on the commission's experts, and again, making sure everything that gets done needs to get done. Thank you.
30 seconds.
Why do you think we need an independent Sewer Commission rather than hand responsibility over to the DPW?
I'm sorry, Sue, I cut you off in the beginning. Is
Okay.
this for Andrew or for Diane?
This is for Andrew. Should I repeat the question?
Please, if you could repeat it.
Sure. Why do you think we need an independent Sewer Commission rather than hand responsibility over to the DPW?
I think it's important to have, obviously, checks and balances. The sewer system for the town of Westwood is a significant self-sustaining asset. It's a very important asset for the town. I think clearly you have to make sure that the Department of Public Works, the sewer department, they're doing everything they need to be doing. Again, it's a significant asset. It needs to be closely monitored.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hayes, to you, why do you think we need an independent Sewer Commission rather than hand responsibility over to the DPW?
Well, I think Andrew answered that question very well. We do just need checks and balances. We need to make sure things are being taken care of appropriately. That's all.
Okay, that was fast. Ms. Hayes, we'll start with you with the next question then. The Sewer Commission has not met the same level of transparency that many of Westwood's other boards have and is required under Mass Open Meeting Law. Why is that, and how do you plan on addressing this issue?
Okay, I think I need you to repeat the first half. You're saying that they haven't met the open meeting
The
law?
question is saying the Sewer Commission has not met the same level of transparency that many of Westwood's other boards have and is required under Mass Open Meeting Law. So the question was, why is that, and how do you plan on addressing the issue?
I don't know why that is, because the rules are there for a reason. So certainly if we are required under Mass General Law, the only thing, I really don't know why, honestly.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Kara, the question is to you then. Should I repeat it?
Please.
The Sewer Commission has not met the same level of transparency that many of Westwood's other boards have and is required under Mass Open Meeting Laws. Why is that, and how do you plan on addressing this issue?
Well, I mean, let's first verify if in fact open meeting law has ever been violated. I have a tremendous amount of respect for both the SOAR department as well as the town clerk's office. If it has been violated, I think it could be remedied fairly easily in terms of posting agendas through the town clerk's office, in terms of making the meetings open to the public, in terms of publishing minutes. But, again, let's verify that. I think Westwood, through the town clerk's office, through the SOAR department, it's an extraordinarily well-run town. And if there is a perceived
30
issue, I think we
seconds.
can remedy it relatively quickly.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Carroll, we'll stick with you for this next question. The majority of Westwood's sewer system is at or beyond its useful life, creating not only potential service issues, but also environmental ones. Do you think this should be prioritized, and why hasn't this been a more phased approach before this point?
I certainly think it's an important issue. I think, we should address it right away, but obviously, the schools are important. Other issues are important. I think we have to rely on our experts. We have to look at the reports that have been done. We have to talk to the director, and we need to make an informed decision just in terms of how pressing this need is and when it needs to be addressed, and we can balance that with the other needs of the town.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hayes, to you. The majority of Westwood's sewer system is at or beyond its useful life, creating not only potential service issues, but also environmental ones. Do you think this should be prioritized, and why hasn't this been a more phased approach before this point?
I'm not sure that statement is true. Some sections of the sewer are older than others, certainly, but they are not particularly old. Most of the sewer system was built out, I think, starting in the 80s, which is relatively young, honestly, for a sewer system. As far as that it hasn't been phased or anything like that, the DPW regularly does televise a certain amount of pipe every year and recommend lining
30
or
seconds.
replacement. You can't dig up the entire town at one time. So you only want to do so much work every year. You wouldn't want to expend that much capital or all at the same time. So they have a plan. They have a capital improvement plan. They're working on the pump stations annually, and they're also televising and lining or replacing lines annually.
Okay, thank you very much. Ms. Hayes, we'll stick with you for this next question. Many of Westwood's sewer easements required to perform critical inspection and maintenance activities are inaccessible and overgrown due to persistent neglect, as reported to Concom and appearing on the capital budget. What proactive approach do you think Westwood should implement to prevent this from happening in the future?
Well, I don't know if the seasonal employees are going to be retained for this summer with this budget we have coming up, but I don't see why the seasonal employees couldn't just go out and once a year, cut down. But you have to understand these easements are on people's private property. So when things grow, it's, they do have to access it to a degree, but really you don't always need to access the easement. You usually just need to access a port or a manhole between a section of an easement. But if you did want to maintain the easements,
30 seconds.
along with Conservation Commission, you certainly could have the seasonal employees just mow them or cut them down once a year. I think that would be a easy solution.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Kara, to you. Many of Westwood's sewer easements required to perform critical inspection and maintenance activities are inaccessible and overgrown due to persistent neglect, as reported to Concom and appearing on the capital budget. What proactive approach do you think Westwood should implement to prevent this from happening in the future?
To the extent it's economically feasible, I think the answer is probably to conduct more inspections. I think that would help alleviate some of the issues.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Carroll, we'll stick with you for this next question. How would you educate homeowners on the availability of a second water meter?
I think I'd take a two-pronged approach. I think number one, I would probably send literature home to the homeowners' home to make sure that they knew about it. In addition to that, I think I'd want to follow up with a phone call. I think the second meter program is an important program in the town. It's one that I take advantage of. And I think it's one that there's a little bit of confusion on, especially for new homeowners in town that get here. A lot of people don't know the program's available. So I think we need to provide as much information in as different ways as we can. Again, maybe with the mailing, maybe with a phone call. And I think that'll get the message across and the availability of the program.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hayes, to you, how would you educate homeowners on the availability of a second water meter?
I would use the local newspaper that we get every Thursday in our mailboxes. I would mention it there. I would certainly publicize that by using a second water meter, you're going to save yourself some money on your sewer bill. Flyers, I would use Facebook, all the online resources we have now. I just got a newsletter last week or the beginning of this week from the DPW to my inbox on my mail. So I would just put it out there on the normal channels of communication that we use.
Okay, thank you. Next question, we'll start with you. How would you encourage the elimination of septic systems?
How would I encourage them?
The elimination of them.
Well, am I assuming that there's a sewer in the street that they could tie into? Or it's kind of an open-ended question. Septic systems are usually used in places where there is no public sewer. So if a sewer had been installed after a septic system was put in, then I guess when it's time to do maintenance or that septic system has reached its useful life, it might be a good time to transfer and tie into the sewer. But I would think anyone that had the opportunity to tie into a sewer would choose to do so rather than own and operate their own septic system.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kara, to you, how would you encourage the elimination of septic systems?
Well, to the extent it's possible, I'd want to see if you could provide some type of financing program to the homeowner, because to Diane's point, it would be very costly unless there's a sewer line in the street. But I would certainly want to facilitate an open dialogue between the homeowner and the commission to make the homeowner available of the possibility of tying into the town sewer system. And then if there was a financing program that could be put in place to help the homeowner tie into the system, I think that would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you. And this is our last question. Mr. Carroll, we'll start with you. How do we reinvest in the town sewer system and keep the rates from skyrocketing?
I think that's a great question. I think we should certainly look into long-range debt options with interest rates where they are. I think to the extent we can take out long-term debt at a very attractive interest rate, like the United States government is right now on a lot of their debt, I think that's an interesting solution and maybe the best solution. If we didn't want to take on debt, I know the cash flow that's provided by the sewer department is very strong. If we could take it out of operating cash flow as much as we could,
30 seconds.
I think we could look at doing that as well. But I think we have two good solutions in terms of long-range debt because of interest rates where they are and also the profitability of the department out of cash flow. Thank you.
Okay, Thank you. And Ms. Hayes, to you, how do we reinvest in the town sewer system and keep the rates from skyrocketing?
I think the sewer system, I guess our rates are kind of set from the MWRA. So we pump our sewage to the MWRA and they charge us to treat it. So as long as the MWRA doesn't raise their rates, we won't have to raise our rates. I think for us to take a hit from the MWRA and not raise our rates would affect the enterprise fund that we have available. But we have a very healthy amount of money for the sewer system, and we have a very healthy sewer system. It's very well run. So I feel confident that we don't have to worry too much about this. It's not coming out of the general fund, as I mentioned before. And as Andrew said too, there's so many options available for low interest debt if we had to take that on for some major project.
Okay, thank you. We are ready to go to closing statements now, and we're going to go in the same order that we did opening statements. So 2 minutes to you, Ms. Hayes.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you for your time, and thank you to Mr. Kara, and good luck to all the select board candidates. I'm here tonight to offer my skill set on behalf of the town. I think I can do a lot of service to the community based on my professional background, and I'm happy to do it. So please vote for me come June 2nd. Thanks.
I'm sorry, Sue, can you repeat that?
Sure. I said thank you. And Mr. Kara, to you, 2 minutes.
I want to thank both the Westwood Media Center and the League of Women Voters for the chance to be here tonight. I enjoyed telling you a little bit about myself, my family, and my background. I think it was great to have an open dialogue with Diane about the Sewer Commission and some of the issues that are going to face it in the years ahead. I certainly think it's a significant self-sustaining asset for the town that needs to be protected and preserved. I think the legal skill set I've developed the last 20 years would translate well to protecting that system and providing residents with reasonable rates and fees. Please consider supporting me on election day, but regardless if you support me or not, please vote. That's the most important thing to do, and hopefully look forward to seeing you on election day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you both. I want to thank you both for running. Diane Hayes and Andrew Kara are both candidates for the Sewer Commission, and voters will be voting for one of these candidates on June 2nd. I want to thank all the candidates for running and participating tonight. I also want to thank the Westwood Media Center and the League of Women Voters of Westwood, Walpole, and Dedham for providing this opportunity for candidates to make themselves known. And thank you to the audience for all the questions you sent. I apologize for not being able to get to all of them. As a reminder for those who joined us late, the polls will be open on Tuesday, June 2nd from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., observing rules of social distancing and wearing masks. If you choose to vote absentee, you can request a form on the town clerk website or obtain one in the lobby of the police station. All ballots must be received on Election Day, June 2nd. Today's debate is a co-production of the Westwood Media Center and the League of Women Voters of Westwood, Walpole, and Dedham. Any use or reuse of this program requires the approval of the Westwood Media Center and the League and must be shown in its entirety without any editing. For those who joined us late, you can watch the forum in full when it re-airs or on the Westwood Media Center programming YouTube channels. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that promotes informed and active participation in government. The League does not support or oppose specific candidates or political parties. It does, however, take positions and advocate for issues that it has studied. Membership in the League is open to men and women 16 years or older. For information, visit lwwestwoodwalpolededham.org. Members of the League of Women Voters may become candidates for public office. While the League encourages our members to become politically active, we have specific procedures in place to ensure the integrity of our forums and fulfill our commitment to being a nonpartisan organization. Please be assured that all efforts were made to create a wall between all the candidates and League debate planning. This barrier specifically includes no access to debate questions in advance. If you have a concern about this, please do not hesitate to contact the League. I'm Sue Flycobb for the League of Women Voters, and I thank you for watching. Participate in our elections, and remember, democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you all.